Hello, listeners. We are back sooner than anticipated with the first SLP short for a very long time. But we just figured that today's breaking news around the way that the Super League points are now, the table is now going to work with points percentage rather than points, the traditional points format. And also the salary cap changes, which no one seems to be as interested in, but we are. We thought that that's a big enough topic on its own to address in a little special episode. And then if you guys have got any more views that we haven't caught in this show, we'll discuss them on the main show next Tuesday. But we just thought, when we've got 6 games to talk about, we don't need 6 hours of talking about this topic as well. So you've got myself, Mark, and we've got Alan, fresh from recording the main episode for this week last night. So if you haven't listened to that yet, do go and find it on your podcast feeds. But this is SLP short, the Super League table and salary cap changes. Alan, what a crazy day! Moving to Tuesdays has not broken the curse.
No, well, we should have known. I mean, we played Russian roulette with it last night, didn't we? With a few kind of comments about, Tuesday news, blah, blah, blah. But yes, it will. It always gets you.
Yeah, it
doesn't matter what you do.
No, it's now the Wednesday curse, and we also have talked. We talked a little bit about. We flirted around the topic as well of, is the season going to be completed, and what other things need to be looked at now, and unbeknownst to us, the Super League and the RFL were ready to make that announcement this morning. So the press release that came out explaining the changes said the RFL board have approved a number of changes regarding fixtures, the league table and the salary cap, following discussions with the Super League board and clubs about specific challenges of the 2020 Betfred Super League season.
Yep, so firstly about the fixtures and the league table. So for the first time since the introduction of the Super League in '96, the final table will be determined by points percentage, acknowledging the possibility that not all clubs will be able to play the same number of matches before the end of the regular season, at which point the top 4 clubs will qualify for the playoffs. These changes will be introduced immediately and have a striking effect on the league table. To qualify for the playoffs, a team must have completed a minimum of 15 matches unless they end the regular season in the top 4 on competition points anyway. So in brackets they've said this stipulation will be reviewed and could be amended by the RFL board if 4 or more clubs do not complete 15 matches. So they've given themselves a bit of flexibility there.
Yeah, the threshold for postponement of a fixture will be the non-availability of 7 or more of the club's top 25 players on salary cap value for COVID-related reasons, including test and trace. Clubs can still choose to play fixtures in these circumstances, though, and following any postponement, the first option will be to rearrange them. So the first option is to rearrange the fixture for one of a number of possible windows. So they have announced some additional match slots for rearranged fixtures that have been identified. We'll talk about these slots in a minute, but if the 2 clubs do not have the same additional match slot available, the fixture will not be rearranged. So that's when the real effect of the points percentage comes into play.
Yep. So as we've said, the much forgotten bit about salary cap. So to recognise the possible strains on clubs' playing squads throughout through the combination of positive COVID-19 tests, test and trace, and the number of fixtures to be played, 2 adjustments have been made to the salary cap regulations for the 2020 season only. So number 1, players can play any player on their register, including players recalled from loan to other clubs, without impacting their salary cap, provided the player has a salary cap value of £30,000 or less. And number 2, if a player who tests positive for COVID-19 is unable to return after the minimum isolation return to play periods, their salary cap value will be temporarily removed from the club's aggregate liability, which will allow the club to sign a replacement.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that when we give our views, but no one else seems to care so much about that part. But Simon Johnston, the RFL chairman, said, as a board, we recognise the unique challenges this season has presented and the need for flexibility and creativity in response. It has been an immense logistical effort for all to get the Betfred Super League season up and running. We congratulate all involved, especially the players, and we know that our supporters are enjoying the opportunity to follow regular Super League rugby, whether it be on Sky Sports, the BBC or the R League app. Like other sports before us, and doubtless others to come, we have to recognise that this is not going to be a normal season. A number of fixtures have already been postponed, affecting some of the clubs more than others, and we have to allow for the possibility of that pattern continuing. These decisions regarding the rearrangement of fixtures, amendments to the salary cap, and most significantly a new way of determining the league positions are a realistic and sensible response to those issues, and we hope they will be welcomed by players, coaches, supporters, and other stakeholders in that manner. The whole sport is doing everything in its power to deliver a Betfred Super League Grand Final later this year that will see the crowning of our 2020 champions.
Right. So, going into more specific details. So, about the league table and playoffs. So, at the end of the regular season, the club with the highest win points percentage shall be at the top, and the club with the lowest shall be at the bottom. The win points percentage shall be the number of matches won by a club divided by the number of matches played by the club multiplied by 100. And, an operational rule, we love that. Operational rule B27 shall be further amended so that when clubs have an equal win points percentage, their relative positions shall be determined by points scored percentage. So the points scored percentage is calculated by dividing the number of points scored by a club by the number of points it concedes and then multiplied by 100. If the positions are still equal, positions will be determined by the toss of a coin, which will be carried out at such a time and place that the RFL shall direct, and those clubs concerned shall be entitled to witness the toss. So the note on that is this drafting removes all the usual options that would be impacted by the number of matches played. So next point. Subject to
this is just more detail about the 15 matches thing that we've already talked about. So I think that detail is kind of well covered in the main statement, isn't it? Let's not go into too much about that, and we won't go into the nitty gritty of the salary cap stuff as well, because the key is that the players under £30,000 salary cap value don't count on the cap, basically. But the additional match slots, there's 4 of those that have been opened up. So the first is actually next weekend, September the 17th/20th, for clubs not in the Coral Challenge Cup quarter-finals. October the 3rd, for the clubs not in the Challenge Cup semi-finals, and then on the October the 18th and 19th weekend for clubs not in the Challenge Cup final, and also the weekend of, not the weekend off, but the days of November the 1st and the 2nd as well are opened up as options for additional match slots. So that's where rearranged games can be played. They're fucking banking on Catalans getting knocked out of the cup, aren't they? But anyway.
Well, it gets easier for the later ones, doesn't it, in terms of, teams in the cup?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Changes to the table, I guess. Do you want to take us through the headline changes there?
Yes. So the headline change is Catalan now go top, with St Helens, Warrington and Wigan all dropping a place. So the playoff teams are the same, but the order is different. There's no change for Leeds, Castleford, Huddersfield or Hull FC. Wakefield go back just ahead of Salford, and KR stay bottom.
Yeah, when we tweeted about this earlier today, we asked a question of the wonderful Tony Collins about whether this has happened before or whether it's a new thing, and Tony pointed out that the league table was decided by percentage from 1906 through to 1930, and also in World War II, because during those times the clubs at that time did not play the same number of matches in a season, just as they won't be this year potentially. So there is nothing new, unique or new about it, is what Tony had to say. Obviously, in the 1906 to 1930 period, I don't know if that was agreed upon before the season started or a reaction to maybe like bad winters or something.
Yeah, it's possible, isn't it? I mean, because
so that's why games will have been cancelled, that sort of stuff.
Because it's such a long period, it makes me think that that was just the
way it was.
The way it was.
Yeah, and World War II, we had the Emergency War League. I think this is going to be called the Emergency COVID League this year. We ran a couple of polls and tried to garner some comments from you, our followers and listeners, to get a bit of an idea about things. So the first poll question was, what do you make of the decision for Super League for the Super League table to be decided on points percentage? And the two options we gave were sensible and fair or stupid and unfair. And to be honest, fairly typically of the world we live in now, it was a close vote. I should learn not to give people like a binary choice, because anyway, 56% voted sensible and fair, and 44% voted stupid and unfair. We do have some of the comments we'll talk about were directly as a response to that, whereas some were just general comments that we've received on the news. So, but you can probably judge where people might have fallen in that first poll result from that. Just as sort of a heads up for our own views, I would lean more into the 56% than the 44% personally. I think it's sensible.
Yes. Unfortunately, I can't provide that level of balance, but we always try to be balanced. I also think it's probably quite sensible, and it's an indication that there's a recognition of the impending, or that it's a likely outcome.
Yeah,
or there's certainly a distinct
aspect when we keep seeing games threatened, isn't it? It's a recognition of that. Yeah. So yeah, that doesn't mean that we don't have questions over how it works and some issues with it as well. So we'll talk about those in a little bit. But do you want to take us through the second poll?
Yeah, so the second poll, and this is based on a few people's kind of comments. We asked, what's your feeling on the pandemic-affected season in 2020 after the changes that have just been announced? So we have three options on this one, so less binary. So the options were still excited by it, just get it completed, or scrap it, lost interest. So the winner, just under half, 49% of the vote, just get it completed. Just get it done. Next, still excited by it, 27%. And last came scrap it. The lost interest was just 24% of the vote.
Yeah, so it does seem like everyone's kind of that. Not everyone. More people than not are of the opinion of let's get this done. Let's get this season done. And some of them are of the really top end of that, and some of them are just the pragmatic middle position on it, which I think is probably, whilst I still love the game and I get excited when the games are on, in between game times I get a bit tiresome with all the reports and stuff. So I was a just get it completed person personally.
Yeah, I mean, I voted still excited by it, but obviously I'm looking at it as a neutral. I view it as, quite close. I could understand if you're a Wakey fan or a KR fan or a Huddersfield fan, you might not be as bothered as a Saints fan, for example. But yeah, it's understandable that people have come to the conclusion that just getting it done is the most important thing.
Yeah, so let's run through a few of the fan views we've had in. Like I say, some were in direct response to the poll questions, and some were just generally on the theme of the news. So, Cutthroat Jake said, "Sounds a good idea. I wonder how many of the final top four won't have played the requisite 15 games." I mean, based on my interpretation of it, Alan, I don't know if you agree. I would expect none of them to have not played the requisite 15 games, because I've worked this out, and I would have thought, based on a 20-game season, to finish in a top four position, I would think you would need to win at least 13 games, at the very least, to get into a top four position, and that would be 26 points out of a possible 40. With the way the season's shaping up as well at the moment, with three clubs that are quite clearly cut a bit adrift, and Catalans would have to win every game that they play between now and the end of the season to finish on 14 games. But in fact, no one would finish on 14 games. They've already lost 2 games, so they could only win 12 games. So I would say none, Jake or John. But yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah. Probably, yes. I think it's very complicated to work out, and it seems you've done more thought on this one than I have, but it feels like it's there as